Well, it's September. The schools are back. If you're a teacher, you're having to dust off your notes and get back in the classroom again. You might be feeling a little bit nervous about that. And society is moving towards normality again. But what about the church? Well, sadly, we're not able to resume worshipping altogether, much as I miss everybody, and I'm sure you do too, and miss that gathering together. But there are a few things that are changing. I want to update you and I want to encourage you during this season. So first of all, as of the 13th of September, there will be a 9:15 service in church. It will be a said communion service. You'll need to book to go, and sadly we'll have to wear masks in church and there won't be any singing, but it will be a step towards resuming corporate worship again. There'll be a little video coming out about that, so check that out and come along. Also, we're going to be starting events in church in the evenings, which will again be communion services, but they will be focused on missional communities. Some of the larger missional communities will meet on their own. Others will unite together with another one and share time together, taking communion and worshipping together. So these are steps towards resumption of normal life. But a lot of what we really enjoy about church, sadly, is still on hold. There are a few changes in staff. I just want to tell you about those. Sadly, we've had to say goodbye to Laura, at least from staff, not from church, but she's served the church so wonderfully in communications, and we are seeking to replace her. The details of that post are on the website, so if you know of anybody who's skilled in communications, maybe you could encourage them to apply. Also, we've been able to obtain a grant from the National Lottery for a refugee worker, and Ellie Winfield will be starting 2 days a week. And that will enable us to coordinate our ministry to refugees and to provide a good pathway for people that we're trying to serve as they come into the city. Daniel and Angelica have both been to selection conferences. They've both been recommended for training for ordination, and I'm glad to say that they will be carrying on with us, and it's great to have them on staff as they train for ministry. This is a challenging time, and a few days ago I was on retreat in Devon, and you may say, oh, that's great for you, Steve, to be able to go on retreat. I wish I could. Well, you know, retreat is sometimes a bit of a challenge. First of all, what I find when I go into solitude is that all sorts of stuff that's inside me, which I hadn't really noticed, starts to surface. All sorts of thoughts and attitudes and temptations, and I have to bring those before God and deal with them. And secondly, to actually pursue God's presence in a concerted way over a period of days is quite hard work. Well, you may not be going away on retreat, but there's a sense in which this whole period of time is a bit like a retreat. Maybe you can identify with those things that I've mentioned about the stuff that rises up within you. What do you do with that? You have to bring it to God. That whole challenge about pursuing God's presence during this time. Well, I've been thinking about some of the parables that Jesus told in Matthew's Gospel. In Matthew 25, he tells the story about the bridegroom who's arriving, and you know it, the bridesmaids are waiting for him, and half of them have oil for their lamps and the other half don't. And when the bridegroom arrives, only half of them are ready, because they have seen that the waiting is part of the welcome. And then Jesus tells another story in Matthew 21. He tells a story about two sons whose father says, I'd like you to go and work on the family farm. And one son says, sure, Dad, I'll go. And the other son says, no, I'm not going. But actually, in the father's absence, it is the son who says that he wouldn't work on the farm who does obey his father. And I think that speaks to me about this time. It's not really what others see us doing that matters. It's what we do in secret. It's It's how we deal with this period of absence. In Galatians chapter 6, we are encouraged to bear one another's burdens. And I know that for many of you during this time, you have really appreciated other people bearing your burden with you through your core groups and through your communities. And I want to pay tribute to all our leaders of the St. Nick's communities who've done such a wonderful job in shepherding people during this time, and also St. Nick's staff. But also in Galatians 6, it says that everyone has to carry his own load. And I think I'm very much aware that that is the case for us at the moment. Nobody else is responsible for my walk with God ultimately than me. And this time, it is a bit like a retreat, and I have to dig in. I have to keep bringing to God those things that are surfacing within me, and I have to keep seeking Him and pursuing His presence. We've been looking at sharing our faith. In the morning, we've been looking at the 5 marks of mission, and in the evening, we've been looking at Isaiah 61 as Jesus' mandate for ministry and mission. And you may think, well, how does it all work out in this time when we can't really gather any as we would normally do, and our relationships are a bit more restricted? Well, it seems to me that mission looks a lot like it did in the Acts of the Apostles, not just through the apostles preaching to large crowds, but individuals listening to the Holy Spirit and being led to other individuals who are seeking God. It happens to Philip, it happens to Peter with Cornelius, it happens to Ananias, who ministers to Saul, who becomes the Apostle Paul. And these are individuals who are responding to the Holy Spirit as He leads them. And I believe that's what mission looks like for us today. So as we go into each day, we can ask, Lord, who are you going to put in my path today? I'm available to you, and I want to work with your Holy Spirit. I just want to return a little bit to this theme of waiting. And I've been looking again at the great poem by R.S. Thomas, Kneeling. He pictures a priest in a rural Welsh church, kneeling in church, waiting for inspiration for his sermon. And this is what he writes. Moments of great calm, kneeling before an altar of wood in a stone church in summer, waiting for the God to speak. The air a staircase for silence, the sun's light ringing me as though I acted a great role. And the audience is still, all that close throng of spirits waiting as I for the message. Prompt me, God, but not yet. When I speak, though it be you who speak through me, something is lost. The meaning is in the waiting. I know what Thomas means. There's many a time I've spent praying for God for inspiration for a message, and then realised that actually the important thing is not the message, it's not that moment of communication. It's actually the time spent with God, waiting for Him. The meaning is in the waiting. And so I just want to encourage you during this period of time to draw into God. When we get to the end of this period of time, we're going to look back on 2020 as that year. For some of you, it's been that year when our wedding plans were disrupted. For others of you, it's that year when we weren't able to see members of our family for so long. For the others of you, it's that year we weren't able to go to church. Well, for all of us, it'll be that. But wouldn't it be sad if we look back on 2020 and say, that was the year I did more Sudokus. That was the year I watched all those box sets. When it is the year, the opportunity to draw close to God in a way that we have never done so before. So I want to encourage you to do that. When will you do that? How will you do that? Where will you do that? Let's aim to emerge from this so much stronger, because of the constraints of COVID. You know, there are things you can do. There may be someone that you are thinking of right now who would love to be invited to our 9:15 service with you. Why not invite them? You can meet one-to-one with many people. Maybe you're waiting for someone to reach out to you, but could you arrange to meet one-to-one with somebody? We can meet in groups of 6 outside. I think the enemy of this season is passivity. So I want to encourage you to take initiative with one another. Maybe particularly as our lives speed up a little bit with work, we need to take a bit more time to think, how are we going to build community? How are we going to build relationship? So God bless you as we go into this very extraordinary September, very extraordinary autumn. Let's be open to what God is going to do. God is at work. I know we'd love for it all to be over, but this is a time like no other, where the meaning is in the waiting.